Okay, so good. Yes. We're off to the races, finally. Welcome very much to Conversations. One of MNN's truly greatest and finest, and one of the pioneers of public access, a believer in it, as am I, and that is Nat Wood. And Nat Wood's been around forever in terms of public access. He produces 30 frames a second, a really good program that he's put together in his own right. He does the direction for a wonderful, real pioneer of cable television, public access, being Florence Rice, does community cop and other things, believes in community, and he has a wide-ranging intellectual interest in the human condition. We're going to have a conversation about that and other matters, and so welcome, Nat. We were just chatting.
Thank you, Hal.
Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Talk a little bit about yourself. I know you can. Just wait in a little bit, just a few minutes about, you're a New Yorker, I guess.
Yes, I'm a native New Yorker.
Mm-hmm.
I was born in Harlem Hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Went to Catholic school.
Okay.
Went to St. Charles and St. Mark's in Harlem and Cardinal Hayes. And
did you like school when you were young or not?
No.
I didn't either. I hated it. I wanted to play baseball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like learning. But
that's a different proposition, isn't it? Yeah.
Right.
Because you're what's called an autodidact, I believe.
Correct.
So
Correct.
And I respect that. You teach yourself. And the main thing is you got curiosity to learn on your own, and that should be something that should be recognized rather than filling yourself with rote things that the education process does.
I actually think that development, human development, lies in man's autodidactic nature. I think the things that you learn in school, I mean, you know, you learn a couple of good things. You learn how to read and you learn how to count. But the exploration of knowledge itself, you don't even begin to get into until long after you're out of school and get into the world and meet people and do things and travel and see things as it is.
Although the kids like little 5-year-olds, 4 years in school, they're really curious about everything. They're really curious. They're learning like crazy.
But that curiosity, by definition, is autodidactic. I
think so, I think I've said to many people, my favorite human beings, I think, are 5-year-olds.
Right.
5-year-olds are just dead honest.
Right.
They're honest. They got no artifice, and they're honest, and they're believing, and they're curious about everything.
And there's no one telling them what they cannot explore.
Or what they must learn in order to be a human being.
Correct.
And there's all kinds of people who think you have to learn this, you have to learn this, you have to learn that. And then all the specializations that develop along those lines divides and conquers, in the language of other thinking, the various people of the society who tend not to be able to think about the whole, synergetically, or the whole. What you do, it seems to me. You have a wide-ranging interest in everything. And you've been curious about that. So when did you first get over into public access? Can you do that? We're in public access, celebrating it as an institution.
75-ish.
That's
no, not 75. What am I talking about? 95-ish.
95.
Yeah, 95-ish. No, you are truly a public access pioneer.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, I believed in it from the get-go.
I'm a public access machine.
Yeah, but you are a real asset, and you really do, in your heart of hearts, really believe it and see the value of it.
Oh,
a lot of people will
Lord,
poo.
yes.
Do you realize how many people will poo-poo, as they say, public access, because it's only, after all, the people. It's not the stars that have been recognized by the ad agencies to get eyeballs and so forth. You know?
Well, when I first got into public access, I was called stupid. I mean, really. I mean, you know, what was I doing? You know, public access, they told me it was like goofball TV.
Wayne's World.
Yeah. But most of the people who told me I was stupid don't say that anymore.
No.
We have done such fantastic
You're like a tornado
things.
that's building steam up in terms of its voracious intake of information important to understanding the human condition, the evolution of events in the universe, I'd suggest.
Well,
You're going faster and faster.
I'm very, very fortunate in that I have attracted some of the most unique and intelligent people in the world. So by definition, I brought the school to me as opposed to going to the school.
But you did seek it out. You had to do
I
some
did
seeking
seek it out.
So
I did seek it out. And I did have to see the potential in it before others to seek it out, and I had to get over the negativity. A lot of the stuff I've been able to do. I've been able to do simply because I had no one around to tell me I couldn't do it. So I was too stupid to know I couldn't. It couldn't
no
be done.
No prison guards. Right. No. Yeah. Right. No authority figures.
Correct.
Yeah,
correct.
Right. Yeah. Just let them be. Yeah. I agree with that. I think that's great and everything. And so you do that, and you're interested in everything. You still 30 frames a second. How's it? You still doing? You've done some really good stuff and great editing on protest marches and so forth. So you have political interests. You're interested in economics. You're interested in anthropology, evolution,
the arts,
science,
economy,
arts, and everything.
Economics.
So that's like what would be called, in a certain sense, a comprehensivist.
It's called humanity.
I was always, well, there's science, and there's things that aren't involved with humanity, but
I think science is part of humanity. I think learning how to improve people's lives starts from a premise of humanity. I don't think any of that veers away from what it means to truly be human.
Were you familiar with C.P. Snow? Does that ring a bell? He was a fellow who wrote a book. I forget what he called it now. But it was to make a distinction between the arts and the sciences. Two cultures. There was something called two cultures. Big figure back in the 60s, 70s. And that you have the sciences, and then you have the humanities. Yeah. And the sciences, there's a difference between that because you're involved in different processes. And I used to get in trouble as a professor because I used to think there ought to be a department within a university. I was taught at university. There ought to be a department of everything. Instead of breaking it all down into subjects that people study in great depth and get all tunnel visioned out within their own area of expertise. And comprehensivist, it does seem absurd at a certain level because, you know, Nat, no matter how much you try, we can't learn it all.
No,
there's a lot to know. You just can't be done.
No.
But to have an appreciation of trying to understand the patterns between systems is something that's
gives
worthwhile.
Us something to do while we're here.
Right, and it also fills a unique capability of pattern recognizing that human consciousness has, and it's exercised often by our so-called leaders to the advantage of their tribe that they represent, or business, or whatever. Right. And not by the people as much as it ought to. And it's really a subversive kind of thing. And I think kids have it. I think kids have, the 5-year-olds have it just instinctively. They have this capability to be interested in everything.
I think we all have it instinctively.
Okay.
I think we are programmed not to look for it, and I think that is intentional. Just like it's intentional in Texas to eradicate those things in slavery that are not comfortable to listen to. That is intentional. We are taught many, many lies. One of the things that the internet does is allow us to seek out information on our own. Yeah. That has to be a pain in the behind to educators.
Of the keepers of the various canons.
Correct.
Of truth, the justice in the American
way.
It
like really has to be a pain in the behind because it seems as though there is an intentional focus on dumbing down the population so as to manipulate the population. There are those who believe that that's what keeps the system in order.
Has it always been like that? We were just chatting things. We were talking about things before the cameras rolled about how one thing we can agree upon. We are, let's say, without going into some of the various wisdom schools, let's say, that evolved and everything. But one thing we can agree on that Homo sapien is part of the evolutionary process in the universe.
Yes.
So that's a beginning point at which we can find a commonality.
Yes.
And that goes back about 3.8 billion years when we moved from, and it can be seen within a materialistic context without going into spiritual deities and so forth, like Thor and Jupiter and things like that. But we do that, and so we're part of an evolutionary context that got started, I guess, organic evolution about 3.8 billion years ago. 8/10 of it, the evolutionary process itself, was in the realm of bacteria, and then it gets to the point where, and it goes through a process where you have a steady state within an evolving system, and then there's a quickening, and there's tensional integrity going through the whole, and that's part of the structure of molecular structure, and then it gets to a point, and then there's a quickening, and then there's the emergence of the new. They call it punctuated equilibrium, Stephen Jay Gould and Niles Eldridge and so forth, and that the new appears. And we came up the hominoid line. We're all out of Africa, that is Homo sapien, and best we can understand from mitochondria is our species appeared from the hominoid line, Homo, let's say, Australopithecine, and then Homo habilis or habilis, and that we appeared about 200,000 years ago in evolution in Africa. Does that ring true to you?
Yes.
As far as we understand things now in a way that we wouldn't have understood 100 years ago, or that we're learning more and more.
Well, see,
and
I'm not convinced that somebody did not understand that 100 years ago.
Well, before Darwin and so forth, I mean, and history, we were ignorant of a lot of things that we're coming to know, so we're becoming well-versed in terms of the broader realities all the time, do you think, collectively?
Well, by the time information trickles down to the masses, it has been studied and restudied for generations.
Yeah.
So I don't always confuse when we get a hold of something or believe something is occurring as opposed to when it starts occurring.
It could be occurring without
especially in science.
Things could be occurring, and the whole process is occurring without our really being aware of it all the time. It seems to be synergetic. Yeah, there's behavior systems more than the sum of the parts, understandable by our level of consciousness.
I mean, the whole time that they told you it was impossible to split the atom, they were working on it.
Oh yeah. Or what if you what do you think you're going to fly?
Right,
a man meant to fly, they give him wings. That kind of thinking, and that's characteristic of inherited social patterns and thoughts and ideas of human purpose and identity that have evolved and are anchoring us to history.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So that's the context in which everything is coming along now. Yes. And there's a lot. And does it seem to you like it does to me, Nat, every day over the transom comes a new revolution?
I
mean, in understanding. From science?
Well,
the genome, where in the hell did that come from? And it happened so quickly. And then the integrated circuit and the transistor and the computer and the microchip and the thing.
See, I think it's all related, Harold.
Okay,
I think there is science, and what we refer to as arts, I kind of think of as sorcery.
The art you think is sorcery?
Is sorcery.
Not the spiritual things? The spiritual things, the various Jupiter and Juno and the gods and Krakons and the things that people...
I think that's part of art. I think art is not part... yeah, I think that's part of art.
Okay.
There are a lot of people who would be very, very mad at me for saying...
A lot of people are committed to
stuff
this,
like that.
The wisdom schools, the religious, spiritual traditions that people have used. And you think of it, it's like Mount Sisyphus. It's been a long trail of winding up Mount Sisyphus.
And that's why I call it sorcery, because people use the art to program people. And I think religion, theologies, various theologies, is a way of programming people through art.
Art.
That's why you use symbols and signs and hocus pocus and a lot of other stuff. But that's the art. That's the art.
It reflects a reflective consciousness characteristic of our species. We have a self-reflective consciousness. I'm not at all sure a crocodile does. Or an antelope. I'm not sure they are. But I think they have something, but certainly not to the level that we have. I share a lot of my thoughts with my dog.
Yeah.
And I'm not at all sure. He cocks his head and everything, but I'm not at all sure he's cognating. But he's a good sounding board. Better than a shriek I've run into.
But there's evidence, like when elephants walk past a slain elephant or the carcass of a slain elephant, they'll sniff it and smell it.
Take note.
Take notes.
Of things that could even be seen as emotional.
Correct.
Yeah, right.
Correct.
Okay,
or when some predator, a lion or a cheetah or something, slays some sort of deer or antelope, once that creature is subdued, the other ones will like stand in place and like stomp their feet, you know, as if, you know, some ceremonial or emotional thing. So
is that true? In fact, they do that. There's the behavioral pattern.
Yeah. So I'm not sure the level that they feel, but there is some evidence that there is some sort of emotional attachment that
I once did a
animals show to
program
each
way
other.
the hell back with B.F. Skinner, the behavioralist. You know, he tried to argue, I can't find the damn tape, I wanted to try. But he said that he didn't think there was such thing as instinct. It's all conditioned response. But that's another one of the argumentations that goes on.
Right.
Like how complex is the field of psychiatry, trying to understand the human mind and brain, or the brain and the mind.
Correct.
And so everything is so divided and so complicated and everything like that. And what about the possibility, what about the times, this is now what, July 22nd of the 2010, which is generally the Christian era, I guess you see like that. And things are going on. We just had the finance reform bill, Mr. Obama signed and all that. There's a lot going on. We've come through all these things. We've come through wars and so forth. What is your general sense about mankind at this particular moment in the broader evolution of universal consciousness, of which we are synergistically a part, whether we want to recognize that or not? But what's your overall thought? All right, let me ask you a question, focusing. Are you optimistic or pessimistic, let's say, not for consciousness or for the broader ecology, but let's narrow it down for the human prospect?
Neither.
Neither.
Focused.
Okay.
I'm focused.
Okay.
And you use a lot of Bucky Fuller terms. I like that.
He's one of the. You might as well go to the best that they've been able to come out of history. He's one. There's some others. But who were comprehensive.
But again, Buckminster Fuller and Kelso both had very good ideas, but they left out a couple of things in the equation that I think Keynes was more in tune with.
John Maynard Keynes.
Correct,
yeah.
And that is the human proclivity toward greed and corrupting a system to suit oneself or one's own purposes. I think Bucky dealt with trying to empower everyone. But when Bucky died,
83.
Bucky died in 83.
Yeah. About 10 minutes after his wife died. Did you realize that, Mary?
Yeah. No, I didn't.
He was at her deathbed. She died in about 10 minutes. He passed.
No, I didn't.
And after a long marriage.
Wow.
Isn't that that's something you can make a movie out of.
Yeah,
Isn't it, Mr. Spielberg?
That's real nice.
Okay,
that's,
yeah.
But no, there was no NAFTA agreement. There was still what was the thing that Roosevelt signed that Clinton did away with, that allowed the banks to control everything. All of these things were still in play.
I don't know, Glass-Steagall you're thinking of?
Glass-Steagall is exactly what I'm thinking of.
Economic
These things were still in play. There was still a system of checks and balances that dealt specifically with giant corporations' proclivity toward rigging the deck. Bucky just sort of dealt with the pure logic of the numbers in much the same way Kelso did. But Keynes kind of said, dealt with the issue that there has to be some sort of public scrutiny of these guys. There has to be public oversight, because these guys are known for corrupting a system. We as a species, I won't even say corporations, we as a species are known for not so much cheating, but finding the flaw in the existing rules and using those loopholes.
So you could call that be creative.
I could call that being creative.
You're trying to create something new. You got something new. You could creative accounting.
Correct.
And things by which you can get and then you could also get an advanced technology that gives you greater power.
Correct.
In the world, the material world, so you can go and intimidate steal the grain from somebody else, make your tribe stronger, and that's been the history of human organization for a long time.
And that's more about human nature than actual percentages and cursory fees, and that's like who's watching the watcher, which is what we do at Public Access.
Yeah, Public Access is really great. It really more than people realize. Partly because of the way it's financed. It's financed through payments from the cable industry. I don't think there's anything else within the realm of multimedia where that is characteristic. It is similar to what does with C-SPAN, which is a great service.
Yeah.
C-SPAN is supported by the cable industry, and the cable industry has agreed to set up things like MNN and 3,000 of these across the country.
But it's also a tremendous leap of faith, Harold, because in order for it to work, Public Access has to have the faith that somehow out of all of this, somebody like you is going to step forth.
Nat or Josh.
Correct.
Or Barbara.
Will step forth to do this thing, which is a leap of faith because, I mean, you can put all the equipment in the world in, but you have to believe that the community itself will come in and
contribute meaningfully contribute. Well, that's called faith. It seems to me, in a certain sense, and it's fair and it's worth thinking about. That's called faith in the concept, broadly conceived, of what is called democracy, or participation of everybody in the process by which society is organized.
Right.
And there's some people who think that. There are a lot of people who still think we ought to go back to monarchy, because it used to be.
Correct.
After 1,000 years after Rome, you had the crown, and the idea of legitimacy was in the feudal estate, and it was passed down, and they were legitimate. The earls and the dukes, and the way the society, and most people were serfs, wallowing around in the mud, and so that was an idea of legitimacy. So, and some people think there are some people who are gifted. Some people would say some are really intellectually, and we find them in our stars or our athletic ability or our talent.
Do we really care about that? Or, I mean...
but if there's faith in the fact that there's something in the mass of the whole of society that is going to be important, and it's a democratic take on things, and public access is that, because it's public access is for the people, and something's going to emerge out of that, and it's supported so that it doesn't have to be a business. You can be doing it for the pure joy and pleasure of extolling and talking about what you think. And that's very important. It's very rare. I mean, in terms of communication.
It is rare. It is rare. The whole scenario is rare. The concept is unbelievable. For someone to even, excuse me, to come up with this concept is unbelievable. The evolution has been unbelievable. And as always, the concept is long in coming. It takes a long, long time to come for someone to come up with the concept. Then you get people to act upon the concept. And somewhere along the line, the process starts to speed up. That's what's happening now.
It's happening now exponentially.
Exponentially.
And it's all, again, we were talking about the extension of consciousness. I mean, you could have the attitude of the lion, or you could have the attitude of the antelope, what been brought down by the lion. And so you got different functions within the process and so forth. And then you have certain stars. You have Edison. Edison will come up with 1 million inventions that'll make electricity and things, or the Wright brothers. And and then some people are tied to the old way. People tend to get mired in the past, or they're in association with tried and true systems coming out of history. So there's a natural inclination to anchor ourselves to the institutions, and you form institutions. You form educational systems, different institutions, and you have a commitment to those institutions, but at a larger level, everything is transforming and changing all the time. So you have that dynamic inherent in universe. It would seem, it seems to be operative in the evolutionary process.
It is. It is. When I started doing this, the things I started doing, which is basically everything all the time.
Right.
I was the ultimate aberration.
Have you trademarked that sentence? That's a good sentence, yeah.
But I was an aberration. But now there are men, women, and children coming out of the woodwork who are fully intent upon knocking Nat Wood out the box. We develop exponentially. It just takes the aberration to manifest itself, and after that, step aside. Sooner or later, somebody's going to dupe the dupe and dupe the dupe and dupe the dupe and become better than the dupe. You know.
What about collectively? Does the process? It seems to be, if I may, it seems to be the process is one. I don't know. Australopithecine is our hominoid ancestor to the species, and then there was Homo habilis and that, and then so. But the collective process. Let's say humanity's collective situation. Collectively, we appeared, and it's my contention, or at least some people are thinking, humanity has been here 200,000 years, and everything is going, the extension of consciousness into technology, uniquely ours, began with the first club or whatever, has grown now to the point where every day in every field, who would have thought that there could be such a thing as a world-around ability for people to look at this program on their cell phone in China? Or that the communications would be evolving. Or the 50 years ago, we didn't know the way the brain worked. We didn't know there were such things as neurotransmitters. We didn't know. We know these things, and it's coming to a kind of fruition and to a point of we may be thinking about we're going to come into a new relationship almost along the lines of what has occurred in the broader evolution, what has been called speciation. Come into a new relationship to the broader universe out of which we were born and into which we will be relating at a level transcendent to what humanity has been in for 200,000 years. Do you understand? Or is this a closed system? Are we stuck here? When we get to where the weapons now are species lethal as they are since about 1970, also modeling this is we've transcended material scarcity around that same time at the level of capability, nothing to do with the inherited institutions. But we get to the point where that's a qualitative transformation, 40 years or so from when you and I talk now. We're at a point where we can either liberate, and that gives us the ability to liberate the historical pattern that James Joyce called a nightmare of injustice, which it has been throughout the whole series, the whole process, or we can annihilate. That's not been characteristic of any other time in the evolution of our species venture on this planet. But do you think we're coming to a time of coming to a new liberated relationship of the Homo sapien species itself, all 6 to 10 billion people, and the ecology, in a way that the technology is making available to us on the living side, and avoid the unleashing of weapon systems that would destroy now, finally, only after about 1970, the entire species if they were to be unleashed like they have been throughout all of history?
I almost think we got to damn near kill ourselves. We got to damn near annihilate ourselves.
We have the ability now.
Yeah, and I think we've got to pretty much come close to the brink before we get it.
You don't feel we're on the brink? You don't feel that?
No, I mean actually killing a whole lot of people and come this close to annihilation. I think we're going to have to hurt ourselves before we actually back up off of it.
We've been hurting ourselves.
Well, no, we've been hurting other people. We've been hurting weak people.
Well, would the we being what? Homo sapiens collectively?
Well, no. I was watching.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, I got off on
It's amazing where wisdom comes from, you know. And sometimes people could say things humorously, and it makes perfect sense. And you understand.
Amen. Thank God for humor. If you didn't have humor, I'd crawl up and die.
I was watching Chris Rock, Chris Rock thing on HBO, and he said something that was just like profound. He was talking about people. and school.
Yeah.
And he said, he was making a reference to affirmative action or something.
Yeah.
And he said that 10% of the people are smart, and 10% of the people are stupid. And everybody else kind of falls right in the middle.
The middle class.
Right. They're not smart. They're not stupid.
No.
They're like about a C. They just want to go about
Gentleman
their business.
C.
Right. It's the 10% that are smart that basically has the power to either create or destroy life as we know it.
That would be our leadership.
That would be our leadership and our correct. And that's all of the above.
They've not yet come up with a system that is adequate to what the future requires in terms of a liberated planet. They do not have a system in place.
That's because the middle enables them to do this through its complacency. When you were talking about...
And also adherence maybe to democratic notions of how you got to pay attention to the middle.
There's only one reason why you would want a monarch. Because you don't want to think. There's only one reason why you would want your Lord and Master, your deity, to be your conscience. It's because you don't want the personal burden of saying what you believe is right or wrong. You need someone else to do it.
Well, we were cursed in the 3rd century or something with a self-reflective kind. Cro-Magnon caves, they were sitting around and saying, what the hell is it all about? Unlike a crocodile. Didn't have to think about it. You had a self-reflective conscience.
Correct.
People needed to have some answer to what's it all about, Alfie, you know?
Change is scary. Exploring new things is scary.
Also, there was a heck of a lot of learning that had to take place as we walked up Mount Sisyphus or crawled up Mount Sisyphus. Yeah.
And you have to be prepared to fail at what you do before you succeed at what you do.
Okay, that's true.
It is a leap of... an eagle. An eagle sits...
Beautiful.
High up in the air, on a cliff. That's where the eagle builds his eyrie. And in order for a baby eagle to fly, they have to take the ultimate leap of faith. They have to leap from high off of that cliff, not knowing if they're going to fall or fly. If you fly, you're an eagle born. If not, you're just another dead bird.
At the bottom of the cliff.
At the bottom of the cliff. But you have to take that leap of faith. You have to be prepared to fail in order to fly.
Now, wait a minute. Could that be modulated a little bit? Like if I've been here a month and this nest is pretty comfortable and all whatnot, and they're bringing me food to eat and whatnot. What do you mean I got to jump off?
You can stay up
I got to jump off into the boat. Listen, I'm only 2 months old. Give me another couple months, right? And so that I could get, and then the parent eagles are going to do that. What's the record? How many eagles fall to their death?
I think most of them become eagles.
Most of them do fly.
Yeah, I think
so. Not too many of them to make the leap too early.
Correct.
Okay, there's a very interesting metaphor in all that.
Correct.
Are we ready to fly? Or do we need? Are we on the edge?
Some of us are.
I mean, humanity. Is it on the edge of a moment when it must take a leap of faith?
10% of us are too stupid to know we have wings, and 10% of us bring the food and push the babies out, and 80% of us are just like...
I don't know. I think that there's more people are able... Maybe it's the fault of... it's the intellectual's fault. I mean, if it's time to fly, to use your metaphor, it's time for us to take a leap collectively.
Right.
Now, we don't want to do it cavalierly. We could say, all right, it's time. It's time. You could take some existential thing. Let's just take politics or something. Some people would say Iran. Iran and Islam is the enemy du jour now. It used to be commies. Remember they used to COINTELPRO and all that stuff. Anyway, so you had to think, now it's time, if we just get rid of that, let's make the leap of faith by dropping atomic bombs on their atomic capability, something like that. Why not? And we better also do the other Arab countries. That's the thing that could set off the weapons that would end up not with one bird at the bottom, but it would be the whole bloody species if they unleashed the weapons to where it kicked in the American capability that exists at a level of capability. So we don't want to cavalierly
The Americans are so shrewd. I don't know.
You don't think there's anything that would set off the weapon systems of the United States of America?
I think logically, practically, you should think like that. But I also think that America and the leadership of America is such a crafty empire that they always seem to have something up their sleeve, a way to exact terrible vengeance and get away scot-free.
Okay.
You know, I don't know. Ronald Reagan pulled out the threat of Star Wars.
Oh yeah, he did.
But it knocked years of logic out the door.
Yeah,
you know, the logic of you cannot win a nuclear war.
Well, it also brought in the end of the dialectic that was, you know, the free world, unquote, against communism or socialism.
Correct.
And that knocked it out. So then that brought triumphalism.
Correct.
We win.
And
there's all kinds of people
but just
throughout
the concept
society.
of a technology that could render what you have moot and what we have effective was a whole different paradigm that no one had even considered.
Well, I think they had. Armies would win, and if an army would win, if the British went with Gatling guns to India and they only had muskets, you would win. If the Europeans came here and there were Indian nations, Iroquois, they were advanced and everything. But if they had weapon systems and technology that could overcome with power the indigenous people, you just steal the land.
That is correct.
You just go and steal.
And we have satellites in space. We have so much over the world. We have so much all over the galaxy.
And we think we have a system fit for the whole world.
Yes.
And we do not have a system that is able to liberate us from the conundrums and the lack of a system that the future requires for the liberation of the whole planet, rather than for the benefit of a few people at the leading edge and ownership of all the assets that are productive. And we don't have an economic system taking account of Lord Keynes. We don't have a system that is liberating of the humans, of the whole human society. We let women in the world wonder which of their two children she's going to have to let starve to death because she doesn't have enough food to give the kid, when we have a capability of providing overwhelming food and everything else to everybody, but we don't have a system that allows us to realize what we're capable of doing. So they lack vision. They lack a vision that's adequate to what the future requires, not mired in reifying the outdated institutions at a time when we're still in that nest waiting to wonder if we're going to make the leap into a new way of organizing world society. That's our dilemma. Are we ready to make a leap? And it's the intellectuals that are falling down on the job. It's not the political. It's not the business guys. You don't blame a lion for eating an antelope. The intellectuals, the free-floating intellectuals, public access, they're not coming up with an adequate challenge to the assumptions of the so-called leadership that we've inherited out of history that is adequate to one that will be liberating of the people, inclusive of the people, reifying the outdated institutions, and provide a model relevant to the future rather than anchored to the past only. You understand? The intellectuals are falling down on the job.
But I don't know if the intellectuals...
They haven't provided an alternative. They're still talking about socialism or something.
I don't think the intellectuals are the lions. I think they're more a carrion species. I think the warlords are the lions. I think those people who accumulate power and empire are the lions.
Yeah, but they're not.
I think the intellectuals are enablers. I think they're like they feed whores, vultures, whatever, pimps,
and sycophant to the people with the power. Because they're all tied up with the thing where they're going to do something, so they're going to get some money or something to gain, and that by and large they've been bought off and co-opted. By the power brokers. Why should the power brokers be the ones that everybody's going to line up behind?
There shouldn't. There's no logical reason
Where are the large large thinkers. You mentioned Fuller. You mentioned others who would think full. They were thinking about the whole system, and they would be able. It's only from there that you would be able to subsume the assumptions of the outdated institutions that are being reified in the name of democracy by the leaders. The leaders are not your political leaders and the leaders of the institutions, the corporations. There are intellectuals that are not providing an alternative for understanding, particularly progressive intellectuals, are not providing an alternative because they're all reified behind, I don't know, Karl Marx or socialism or everything's good in the government, nothing good in the private sector. They haven't got a thing to bring a vision that the future requires. In my estimation, and that's where the blame
being right is only part of the equation. You still have to be able to get people to see it, especially those people who control the weaponry of the world.
That's right. That's the ones that are most dangerous. You have to, You're going to need them in order. Those who are anchored to history will be. The real challenge is going to be something that's liberating of everyone, to bring justice, elemental justice, and at a material level to all of humanity and all the children and so forth, which we have a capability of. But the real trick is you're going to have to do it in a way that it's going to be so comprehensive to the evolution of the universal pattern of which we are all a part, that it will be able to be understood by and gone along with the forces that want to anchor everything to history, and we shouldn't anchor to history. But we call it the Illuminati, the bastards, the greedy, whatever, would be able to understand, go along with, and be included or subsumed in the end. And that's tricky because that's beyond the dialectic of we win, they lose. It's very tricky because
in order to defeat them, ultimately you have to become them.
I don't know. And wait a minute. That's a big assumption. They will be subsumed within a larger area of understanding. They will become enlightened at another area of understanding.
But then they are not them, they are you.
They haven't got the ability to.
But what I'm saying is... They
don't have the ability to. It's the intellectuals are going to have to provide that, and they're falling down on the job, particularly the progressives, the people who call themselves left.
I'm glad you said call themselves. But
you understand what I'm saying.
But I don't think you fully appreciate what I'm saying.
Okay,
Matt. In order for... me to get you to understand my vision. You control the guns. You control all the guns. I'm the one who have the vision.
This is role playing.
Right, this is role playing.
Psychotherapy. Okay.
Right. Now, I want the gun. I need the people with the guns to understand the vision of a better world.
They're bad. Shoot.
Right.
Okay. You
so
tell
I have
me
all
to
these. I have all these.
I'll take the orders, sir. I'm ready to take orders. I'm ready to take your orders.
And I get them to understand what I'm saying. So now we have all of these intellectuals.
They're bad. They're bad people.
Correct.
We good. They bad. We good, they bad. We good. Have I finally got it right, sir? Have I got it right, sir? We good, they bad. No. I thought I was getting the training. I was trying to become into my role.
Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Let me say something.
And even if I can get the vision across, even if I can get there and say, we're going to do it differently, I become the one with the guns. The people with the vision ultimately ends up with the power in their hand because the gun is the power, and the power tends to corrupt.
Thank you. You got tends into power.
Correct.
Tends to corrupt. Well, absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Right.
It does tend to. Yeah.
So even when you have visionaries who want to do better, once they become the power, once they control the guns, the simple power itself tends to. I'm not going to say absolutely.
When you first did it, you left that tends out. Well, a lot of people do.
But you're a smart guy.
No, so that's one I happen to have on my quote page. But I was trying to get into my role, sir.
Right.
You were the guy who was the leader.
Right.
With the guns.
Right.
No, you were the guy who had the order of the.
I'm the guy with the vision. I'm the good person. You're the bad person with the guns.
I'm getting confused. I was saying the political leaders.
Right.
And the business leaders.
Correct.
Are not the leaders. that there is a level that is transcendent to the level of the inherited institution. They are enthralled to the institutions, and appropriately so, that we've inherited out of history. We've inherited all kinds of notions of education, the nation state, all kinds of things we've inherited, the wisdom schools, Jesus, religion, spiritual traditions, all of this. They've inherited all that, and they're enthralled to that, and they're reifying those things, and they got to work in terms of, and that's an important anchoring. But it's not where the leadership is. You're trying to say that's the leadership in terms of the reality at that level.
Correct.
There's another level of reality which is sort of synergistically encompassing things other than the specialized view of things that view of things gives to the people who are so-called leaders, and we think of as leaders, and it's called intellectuals.
Right.
The intellectuals who are thinking about things at a larger level, and it's not the intellectuals that have the guns. It's not the intellectuals that are the leaders. No, they don't have the they have ideas.
I don't know.
It's at the level of ideas, and it's a level of projection of ideas and suggesting things. But we have all kinds of, like somebody once said, Nat, war is too important to be left to the generals.
Right.
You know, Mr. MacArthur wanted to bomb China and Yalu and all that and everything. And economics, let's say, is too important to be left to the economists. For one thing, it's all specialized, and they have specialized kind of things. There is a broader reality that has to be paid attention to, which short of all the spiritual stuff. Okay? There's a broader reality of it. Like we said, we can't know everything. We don't know everything, but everything does exist, and it is evolving, and it is moving, and there's an understanding of what's going on and so forth at a higher level, but not spiritual.
But if war is too important to be left to the generals, who should it be left to?
Well, war should be studied no more, perhaps.
Right.
But it's now down to the point. But you know, you have to subsume them. You're not going to overthrow by the intellectuals.
By the intellectuals.
All right.
What would that make the intellectuals?
Well, the intellectuals would be. Well, think about it. I don't know. It's really
ultimately
hard to know.
Those people who control war. By definition, once they became the people who controlled war, power tends to corrupt. You tend to become the thing you hate, the thing you are trying to overcome. That is the challenge.
You get co-opted by that itself.
Correct. All of those people that we speak of now will die. All of the people that we spoke of who have been despots in history have died. Hitler lived, he died. However, those philosophies tend to go on and on and on because someone ultimately takes their places. And the sheer power itself tends to corrupt. You have all these lofty ideals when you're looking at it from the other side, but once they give you the job of making things right, and the money and the power and the control is there in your hands, and all the influences that are interested and have an interest in the institutions that you're perhaps trying to subsume within a larger vision as an intellectual. So then it's called the practical necessities of what happens now. And so that's the thing. Now the thing is that's something that thing about the nest. Was that Chris Rock about the eagle, or was that you? No, that was about the eagle being thrown out of the nest or something. No, that's me. That's you. That's a good one. You get that thing down, man. Get that down to a haiku. Well, it's a leap of faith. If you wanna play the drums, you got to go through a period where you get on everybody's nerves and they want to kill you. I think that does happen. I think that's happened in a lot of homes across the land. And stop all that noise. And you have to accept ridicule. You have to accept me coming to public access. I mean, you know, to public access, right? But and there will I was thought of as a complete goofball getting into this stuff. They don't pay you no money. You should get you a good job at McDonald's. Stop messing around with this crap over here. If you think about human society, as we talk now on July 22. What holds it together? What is the glue, or what is the thought, or what is the goal, or what is the shimmering whatever holds it all together? It seems to me at a certain level to the fault of it, and perhaps not at all appropriate, but the most important thing that holds it all together is money. We see programs on the air of television, antiques.
And they say, oh, this is a beautiful, well-done piece of art and so forth. And what they're really interested in, what's it worth?
Right.
What's his name? Vincent van Gogh paints all those paintings down in Arles. They won't sell a bit because
Give me a price.
They can't get anything until he gets 35 million in Southern. That's what the focus is all on, because they do not have a system that is relevant to any other value. So everything is placed within that. More than any other single value that exists in the human panoply of thought and process and the assigning value is money.
Right.
Now, and that signals the fact that there's something wrong with the economic equation in terms of, there's a mismatch.
That is the economic equation.
Well, yeah, but there's something wrong in the policy level and the thinking large. If you think in terms of that proposition that we may have the weapon systems that exist, not inflection points of theory of relativity from 1905 or something, but actual systems that exist and that are ready to be pushed and done. It's not all over because the Soviet Union imploded. It's still there. They got other weapon systems. They were developing black ops and so it's still there. That's still there, existentially new.
Right.
And apparently from the modeling, that's something that should be put forth, big letters, big to everybody, the modeling that shows that within this scenario, if the weapon systems were unleashed, they've been unleashed throughout all of history.
Right.
With some, the Second World War, the last example, we were impotent. It is species lethal. It would kill every single human being on Earth. Right. Brand new in our lifetime. That's a brand new existential reality. On the other side, you can seriously model things that we, with our expanding capability and so forth, have transcended material scarcity as an ontologic reality. There are new capabilities. There's new building materials. There's new capability of providing for all human beings everything that they need within an ecological context that is now intrinsic in the system that exists, and we don't have systems that let there be a demand capability for the people to have income, to be able to clear the market of what can be produced in a living way for everybody. We don't have an economic system except one predicated upon the idea there's not nearly enough. For me to win, you have to lose.
But that is the economic system.
That was the economic system.
That is the economic system.
That was the reality. Out of all of 200,000 years of history, it's been transformed at the level above normal perception of things. It's been transformed for about 40 years. And we don't have a system that relates to that future of non-scarce reality in terms of material sustenance for the human society and the whole ecology.
But economics has nothing to do with that.
It does.
No.
Well, economics is defined by the allocation of scarce resources. All of our institutions. If I win, you have to lose.
Economics,
no, but
not really.
You don't think so? It has been scarce throughout all of human history as you model this scarcity. Are there more haves? The tendency of the technology is to create a greater percentage of the human population evolving. We're heading toward 10 billion. Right. You got trends, you got new materials, you got new developments, you got new capability, you've got all these kind of things. And that are there more? Is the trend for there to be a higher percentage of the world population could realistically be seen to be haves through time? And if that's the case, you're going to reach a point where 50% of the world population could realistically be seen to be haves in terms of our capability. We crossed that line about the same time the weapon systems became species lethal, about the year 1970, the time of Woodstock and Malcolm. And that is something that's a new reality at a level transcendent to the institutions and the assumptions of all the institutions, including economic theory, that we've inherited out of history. Somebody has to deal with things at that level, and nobody is.
Economics was America, the United States of America, the greatest empire. Well, it's global now. It's far more global now than it's ever been.
But we don't have a vision of that.
We've always had a vision.
No, we don't
have a vision. But the sheer fact that America was so isolated for so many years, specifically economically, that there was a communism, a socialism, a capitalism. There were different systems in place.
The fight still goes on, right wing, left wing,
allowed
all
America to benefit more than other countries. It could exploit other countries.
It's doing it now.
Well, no, no.
Okay.
It doesn't exploit. Yes, it does exploit some other countries, but it does not have to rely on exploiting other countries as opposed to exploiting a global class of people as much as it did.
Well,
that means for the first time that Americans' butts are on the line, because we have middle classes in India, and we have middle classes in China, and we have capitalist systems in Russia, and whereas for years, certainly since the end of World War II. America was a thing unto itself. We would trade with like-minded people like England and France and whatnot. But the Soviet Union was somewhere else. China was somewhere else. India was somewhere else. Now these countries are part and parcel to the machine itself, and traders trade globally, and they look at populations, and we are not as important as Americans as we were.
But across the board, if I may,
so you don't need as many Americans working.
Okay, you don't need them hardly at all. Lord Keynes said in a letter to his grandchildren in 1930, you're going to be confronted with something you cannot understand, massive, technologically induced unemployment. The only way for people, the mass of the people, opposed to people who own all these capital assets, who live really well and the castle on the hill and so forth, for the person to have income to buy food for their little baby is to have what they call a job. They are going to have to be employed. You're going to use the labor theory of value. You're going to hoodwink the people into thinking it's perfectly all right for some to own everything and live high and live large, and everybody else to be like serfs on a feudal estate picking up the leaves that the people who set the template do. And that's what we're coming up to right now. You've got about 3 months. You're going to have to test the limits. Everybody's saying we've got to create jobs. It's like surf roll for the people to distribute buying power to clear the market. They got to have a thing that's going to build ownership or some way of distributing income to the people, which is not tied to what they do, and it's going to have the supply, which is intrinsically large, and the ability to clear the market by the people. That woman in Africa could buy the food for a baby if she had some money. They got to get some money to the people to clear the market, and then you're going to get into a thing where supply and demand will be in sync and simul-financing will be in order, and nobody's suggesting any way to do that other than the labor theory of value, create jobs for everybody like serfs on a feudal estate. They're outdated. We need a new vision. We don't have it coming from our political leadership.
This isn't even a new vision. Lord Keynes, I believe, said this in the 30s.
He said that in 1930, letter to the grandchildren.
This is 2010, and we still don't get it.
We've been, and we weren't able to even do that
we're still hollering jobs.
Yeah, well, we're tied
and it's 2010.
And it's the progressives who are tied. Well, they think, we'll just tax everybody and distribute through this. And so we need vision.
The progressives
And one of the places where the vision's going to come is in public access. And public access, even when you get a chance to rat on and on and on, ends. And so, Nat, I'm sorry, we're running right out of time. Your pleasure to have the perception, Nat Wood, pioneer extraordinaire in the realm of public access, a great institution that's going to be expanded more and more. And he does great stuff, great work. And so thanks a lot. I'm sorry I got talking too much.
No, that was great.
That has a tendency to do it. But these are exciting times and everything, and public access is very important. One and all should support it. They ought to get behind real support for that across the country and across the world, that there be a way for people to communicate without having to have it be a business or tied into the money.
It certainly makes you smarter.
Because that is something that has us all enthralled. Okay, thank you very much. We'll see you again tomorrow. We'll be back. Hi there, Frank Craven waving at the door, another good fellow member of the crew here. Okay, thanks.